Hey, what's up, guys? This is Lucas Burnley. You are listening to the Edge and Flow podcast, where we discuss knife making, machining, ADHD, pursuits, and probably like a couple other things, life,
Yeah.
family, kids, everything.
Yeah.
I'm here with my co-host, TJ Schwartz. Let's kick it off, man. How's it going?
Going good, man. It today actually started pretty rough, and then I'm feeling a lot better now.
What kind of rough?
I get like occasional migraines,
Ooh.
and it started out like usually I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, today's one of those days. Like it's usually setting in at like by the time I wake up. But I've been able to stave it off a little bit, drinking tons of water. I usually don't do well with like blood sugar spiking, so I usually avoid sugar. But actually, I found with migraines, like spiking my blood sugar actually helps a little bit with that. And then we had a power outage, which was funny. But I don't know if we talk about that now or
always something, never nothing. Joe Mangiafico TM.
You're right. No kidding. Or if it's not one thing, it's two things.
Dude, it's always two things.
Yeah.
Okay, multiple questions on that. I didn't get migraines until the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it I think is diet related. I've noticed it's weird, man. Like as you get older, I've started noticing like some sensitivities around like sugar, like so morning, like blood sugar spikes in the morning, and I feel like trash. It never happened before, and now I'm like I'm very careful like what I take early.
Yeah.
Are you doing any kind of supplements or anything?
Not enough. I've gone through that. My wife actually is pretty into that. I've been a loser, and I need to definitely get on that train.
I did. It was just like 3 years ago. I started doing like basically like a blood transfusion. No, not really. Like a vitamin regime based on blood work.
Oh, dude, that's smart.
It was pretty cool. I did that for a while, and then I started doing AG1 athletic greens. Now this is like the circular world of podcasting. It'd be great if I was sponsored by them and they were doing something, but they're not. So this is a free plug. But we've used that for like 3 years, and I absolutely love it.
I researched it. I need to bite the bullet and sign up for
Just
that.
do it. It actually is really, really great.
I think one of the main triggers for my migraines, I have vision on my two eyes are very different in prescription. And the differential, I think, is like kind of hard on the brain if I like I don't know. It's like sometimes if I go on a really long drive, like a 10-hour drive all the way to Vegas, the next morning I might have a migraine because like the depth perception going on for that long is like it can trigger a migraine, but it's the next day. So sometimes I think that's one of my main causes, which I can't really fix. I mean, I wear contacts, but
you wear contacts in the shop?
Yeah.
That's interesting. No problems with them, like dust or mist or anything?
We just don't really have dust in the shop too bad. So yeah, it's not.
Y'all hear that? You guys heard that, right? Knife maker doesn't have dust in his shop, so it's pretty good.
I mean, the only dust we create is with sharpening, which is like not very much.
This is like the paradigm shift though, because like as you see shops now, shops are getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner.
Yeah.
I think part of it is probably like awareness around like your lungs.
Yeah.
But two, it's process. Because when you look at like old knife making books, it doesn't matter like how fastidious you were, there was dust.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I've back in the good old days, a 120 grit J Flex belt on a big old block of G10, of course, full respirator. And even with like wrap around safety glasses, you're just like rubbing your eyes. Yeah. I know the life. I can
literally smell that.
Yeah. Like going through a block of blue G10, like 3/8 G10, and then you look at your wall and it's blue.
Oh,
yeah. It's dude. Like, I definitely have been there and I don't like it.
I always said that natural canvas micarta was my favorite flavor. Because like early on, I like ground so much of it. It was just the most familiar like scent.
Yeah. The smell of micarta is a lot better than G10.
It's true.
Yeah.
Man.
Okay. Wood's a good smell until it starts burning.
Yeah. And makes you allergic to it.
Yeah.
I was just curious, man. Like I keep having these moments where I'm seeing something that either I'm doing repetitively working very well, or I'm catching something that I'm doing repetitively and like noticing that it comes at a detriment. And like just recently I was thinking about like AG1 and like just, I guess ultimately like the act of doing a consistent like health regimen or like doing something where it's good and it's like almost fades off and it just becomes habit. But it's like an interesting process.
Yeah.
They say it takes 21 days to develop a habit.
I believe that
in general. So if you want to do something, you just like keep running it.
I need to get on that train.
Are you sticking with your gym?
So I was thinking this was going to lead to that because I gotta admit that we actually stopped with our morning routine just recently because we were doing it in our carport.
Yep.
That's the only space we have, and it's gotten cold. And
it's gotten cold.
And I know that's like wah, but
there's a knife maker in Russia laughing at you right now
as
he like wrestles his bear.
I know, but if this industrial space works out, we're gonna have enough room to like do a full, anything. So
dude,
that's gonna happen if the space does go through.
Okay. Segue onto that. Any progress?
Nothing's changed since the last time we talked. It still looks like it's a really, really good probability, I would say, but just waiting to see what comes down the pipe. So we'll keep everybody updated on that, but I'm getting excited. My wife's more excited
to have you out of the house.
No, actually, she doesn't want that to happen. Fortunately, she wants my office for the kids, which I also want to happen.
That's amazing.
And then in addition to that, the garage, she's actually like really DIY interested. She does a ton of stuff. She has like extra freezer space for all kinds of different projects and like different interesting food ideas. And then she recently, her and her mom invested in a like freeze dryer.
Oh,
and
nice.
She's putting that in the garage. So our garage is going to be like a food processing facility and like give her room to do some wood projects and like old furniture refinishing. Dude, I
feel like her and Maddie would like each other so much.
Yeah.
It's like we just got like our vacuum sealer and a deep.
Nice.
You and I bought the same deep freezer like the same weekend.
Yeah.
And I would guess that was probably not like you and I making that decision.
No.
It's like
no.
We need that.
No.
Yeah.
But anyway,
nice.
She's excited for that.
Yeah, dude, I would be too. I mean, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right.
But before we get too far into this, I wanted to mention and thank our Patreon subscribers, which have been increasing. You know,
it's pretty cool to see
new people every week, and it's only been a couple weeks. And thank you guys. Some activity in there. So
pretty good. You posted up a poll.
Yes.
Of some like questions. You want to dig into those?
Yeah, I was thinking so. I wanted to see what people thought about like being able to supply questions inside there and then us sort of answer them. So this is the first go around. Well, I guess we'll go in chronological order if that sounds good.
Let's do it.
Jesse Jarvis, good friend of mine, he jumped in there and he said, if you had the capacity to take on new projects other than knives/EDC, what would these products be? Something like a dream project or retirement gig, maybe just something fun you don't have time for. And he said for him, it would be fun to make cookware. So I'll let you lead with the answer. What do you think?
Oh, dude, this is this is like maybe an issue like in general. I'm like probably not the best person to ask because this is essentially on many days what my brain does anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Starting at like the small scale, right? I think it would be really hard to go to like retirement. Oddly enough, cookware is something I'm super interested in too, but on the forged side. So internally, I look at related process, different product. Forging for me was that. I'm like, I don't really care about just making a knife, but the idea of being able to like make a spoon rest for some reason is super exciting. Or like a small frying pan.
Yeah.
Because you're using the skills that you already have and interpreting them into a different visual and functional
different
form.
Genre.
Yeah. Retirement is like, I guess ultimately that is my ideal, which would be like, I just want to have a shop. where I can tinker and make things as it catches my interest. But I'm kind of already doing that. Like, I do like a little bit of gunsmithing. I do like, I'm always messing with my surfboards. Like some of this stuff is related. What I'm trying to figure out now is how to actively schedule time for those, because I actually don't want to wait. And so that idea of like, I don't have time to do this does not seem reasonable, because like, you don't know how much time you have. So if it's important and you want to do it, I feel like there's some space around it. What about you?
So as far as like physical products, the only thing I've ever spent money on other than things to make knives or been super interested in is automotive stuff. So it's like right now, or the last like 5 to 7 or 8 years, maybe even off-road, like just Jeeps in general and all the fabrication and like components around that. That's really what has my attention other than knives. And like I said, that's really all I spend money on. In fact, I just got some parts in for my Jeep. I finally am turning the corner on like looking at it and thinking it's time to start building it. And so just starting with the basics, I got some like heavy duty ball joints for it, because that is a weakness on those. And then some sway bar disconnects. Like I just want to get under that thing, jack it up and start doing stuff.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like if I had unlimited money and unlimited time, I'd probably just build rigs and then like sell them and then just build another one.
So that actually like brings like an interesting point. At this like time, I realize that there are many things that I'm interested in doing that I don't want to do myself. So like trucks would be like a perfect example. I have the capability to do many of the tasks. Like early on, I drove really crummy cars and I worked on them and, like did it everything myself. At this point, if I'm going to have a suspension installed, I'm not going to do it myself. Part of it is a space issue and part of it is a time issue. And I think that there's like some clarification there for yourself when you're like, maybe the process of figuring out what it is that you like inside of maybe a hobby and accept. Weirdest one that I think I ever like tracked was I was probably 19 and I met a guy at an IDPA match. IDPA is like a practical pistol competition, right? Kind of like run and gun stuff. And he was talking about, he told me he shoots like 30,000 rounds a year, blah, blah, blah. And at that point I was doing machine work and like doing trigger jobs and like working on stuff. And he was like, oh no, I never like work on my own pistols. He's like, I like coming out here and doing this. I don't want to do that. And I was like, I think it was the first time that I realized that you could like enjoy an activity, but then not do everything surrounding it. Is like very maker mentality. So you want to be like wrenching.
Yeah. Honestly, like the thought of rebuilding engines. I mean, I didn't grow up in like a household that did any of this stuff. Like I grew up in a very Western, like cowboy, rawhide and just like,
is that
organic.
Not part of that life too?
Not the way I grew up. The way I grew up, it was like stacking hay bales and horses and cows and just ranch stuff. And so it was
fixed truck because it's mechanical if it breaks, but nothing more.
Right. And so now it's like been a long history of me just like watching YouTube, reading forums, like ever since I was pretty young. I got into that. And so long story short, I've always wanted to rebuild an engine. And I've thought like now that I have the possibility of having the space to do it, I might just buy like an old 350 4-bolt main, like small block Chevy engine and just build it for literally no purpose other than just to like, check the ring gap and, gap gauge your crank bearings. And like, just because I've always watched videos on it and it just sounds fun. And so it's not even
perfect sense.
I don't even care about like putting the engine in something like the process is the product for me, I guess.
Ooh, we haven't heard that for a while. Again, it's a related skill though too. I think where some of this breaks down for me is I noticed that a lot of interests are still like revenue generating, and that it's not like I don't want to like call it a red flag, but I noticed that it's where my brain is kind of positioned right now. So is that like is it truly separate, or is that I'm just looking at like interesting things in business?
Right.
I think as I'm getting older, I'm getting better about expecting less out of a hobby or interest. Like I can do something now just because I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I think that hopefully that answers the question, Jesse.
I feel like we could probably just spend an hour talking about things that we want to do.
I know. That's a
well, I was just thinking about
Pandora's
like
box.
It really is. I think that like right now I try to do one class a year. So some type of course or training doesn't have to be related to like skills around knife making necessarily. I think I missed this year, but I did like the last one I did was like a patina course. Next year I'm doing a hunting school. It's just the idea of going and learning from someone who is an expert in their field.
Yeah.
But I think that ties into Jesse's question in a pretty fair way, because it is the realization of wanting to expand.
Yeah.
And just realizing if it's not on a calendar, it's like not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So seen too many people wait till like retirement and then not get to do the thing they want to do.
Yeah, that's fair. So another question.
Lay it on me.
Gentleman by the name of John Gruber. I don't believe we've met, but we chat frequently on Facebook and stuff because he's a great customer. But he jumped into Patreon. He said, I don't know if you have discussed this topic already, but he said it'd be fun to hear which model of the other guy is our favorite.
Out of us too.
Yeah.
That narrows it, because at first I read it as like, which other knife guys models are your favorite? And I was like, my head was about to explode.
It's a hard thing to phrase. You have to like think it through. Like, which model of yours is my favorite? Yep.
Okay.
So I guess I'll lead on this one.
Okay.
Of your knives, the model that I find to be my favorite, I hate to say it actually.
I'm really curious.
The Kwaiken, man. I know it's like, it's so ubiquitous and it's like, it's probably a default answer by a lot of people, but I have a hard time not saying Kwaiken.
I appreciate that. I think it like also probably like proves the point of like repetition and like just the visual awareness of a product. Well, so you're talking like Kwaiken folder, right?
Yeah, Kwaiken folder.
Okay, Kwaiken folder. Tell me more. So
I am a big fan of a situation where you can take 4 to 5 lines and make something that's famous, that is like a signifier of the brand and something that's recognizable. Like, for something to have that few number of lines and to be like, whoa, Burnley.
Right. Recognizable.
Like incredibly difficult, because usually to get something to stand out and become like brand defining, you have to get pretty complex with it and like really get out there to isolate yourself from the rest of the industry.
Yeah.
But with like 5 lines, you know what I mean? You've got a top straight line, a couple angles on the pommel, like a couple lines along the bottom. I mean, it's just so slim and sleek and so minimalist, but it's so identifiable. And that is just so hard to achieve. Like, I think it's because as a designer, I can see how hard it is, even though at surface value it looks easy to do something like that.
Like that's like the rule. You know what it makes me think of too, which is like, obviously, like when I designed that knife, I had no idea where it would go or anything else, right? Like I didn't understand some of the things that like you understand in retrospect. I had never put it together like that, where you're like 4 or 5 lines, but it's the truth, right? Where you're like, how? When people tell me that you can't do something new, or like everything's been designed, and there's elements of that are true, but I think there's 2 lessons that come out of the like line concept, which are really minor variations in how you arrange those lines can actually make it stand out. So like on the Kwaiken, one thing that I think was weird, at least visually at first, was when I switched to the flipper, and my flipper was reverse. Like, so it's actually like everybody's flippers had like a little concave. The flipper tab on the Kwaiken is convex. And at first people were like, oh, that's like wrong and weird. And I was like, no, it's a cam, and it gives you more throw for like this very short, this like very slim knife. Right now you like see that around, and I think a lot of times our tendency is to like continue to make things more and more complex for it to stand out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like, the reality is that, like, even if there's a knife that you really like and you're like, I want to make something similar to that, you can figure out what in those lines and flow you like and interpret them. And then the flip side of that is that if you're able to take one of your designs and change a couple of lines and end up at someone else's design, that's a problem. So people always ask, like, oh, like, what is this? Is it too close to another maker? Is it I think a lot of times people are seeing the inspiration, but they're not actually, it doesn't actually have to do with like functionally the design. But if I can, like, if I see a design that is close to mine and I'm like, oh yeah, if you just change that line and that line, you end up here. That's like a point where I think, like, oh, it's too close.
Yeah. And another way to put that is, like, imagine having a design competition where it's like design a knife with the fewest lines possible.
Right.
It's like the Kwaiken is the best to ever do that. You know what I mean? And it almost looks like it was like designed with like, if you were to go into, some DXF drawing program and say, you get the, like, whoever has the minimum number of lines wins, but most of them would just look like a prism. But that thing doesn't look like just like a
I was thinking
cutter.
Cigar shape. That's like what we call like the graphic designer knife or industrial designer knife, where you're like, draw a knife and you're like, it's a little football shape.
Yeah.
And you add in some details.
Yep. Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
I got to compliment that just because of, and I'm not saying that because of the mystique of the Kwaiken. I'm trying to think of it strictly from the design. Like, I think even if it didn't have the mystique, my answer would still be the same.
It's pretty
cool. Like the Nike swoosh, you know what I mean? Like, that's the feeling.
It's nice to hear. I mean, that's like, I don't know. I feel fortunate to have had like a couple where they're like recognizable on their own. It is weird. The Kwaiken is weird, man. Well, it's fun too. Like, I'm excited to see this for you down the line, where like model changes and like expansions. So the Kwaiken was basically like unchanged for like a decade. And in the last year, I did a dagger version and an American Tano version.
I just saw that.
Dude.
It's awesome.
But like, they never really occurred to me before. And like, I always thought like the Kwaiken, I was like, I love it, but it's so limited because the geometry is so specific that there's not much that I could change. I'm like, I can't make a wider blade. I can't really change the point shape. Like, there's all these things, and it's ridiculous. Like, there's always a way to change it. And then meanwhile, like, the Kwaiken has like 50 variations of like size and other things.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see, like, 10 years, are you like, oh, I never saw that. I'm going to do it. It's going to be cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun. Okay. My turn.
Yeah.
This is actually a really hard one. You're difficult.
I know all my designs are pretty bad. It's like,
whatever.
How do you?
I'm gonna split it.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to the Zenaida. Yeah. Right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Zenaida.
Okay.
I mean, it's like a Greek.
Is it right? Okay. So we're gonna Zenaida.
Yeah.
It is like, it's one of those things where it's like, I saw it so early and it is so well thought out regardless of like a maker's time, and you is like essentially like your first shot. To me, that one model kind of showed a potential trajectory that I think was very impressive and like has like come to fruition, which is cool. But it's also weird to say that because it was like your like the first thing, and not many people know about it.
Yeah.
If someone wants to like see that knife, where do they go? Does it exist? This is going to be super weird. Maybe
on
this gets
forums. I don't know.
So it's not like there aren't like photos of this thing.
No, it's almost like a ghost knife at this point. It exists at the U.S. Patent Office level.
Okay.
It exists in my pocket because I have one. And I don't know of hardly anyone else that has one. I mean, obviously people have them, but I don't know who they are.
Okay. How many do you think are in existence total?
Oh, not many. Like maybe 50.
50? I didn't even know there were that many.
Yeah. I don't know exact number, but I'd have to.
Have you ever posted a photo of it in your Facebook group?
In the user group? I don't think so.
In the user group?
Yeah.
Okay. You either have to do it on Discord or in your Facebook group.
Yeah.
Because like it's crazy. You get focus on an era of knife making for a maker. And that's like kind of, I still have people that like have like this very set image of like what it is that I do. And some of it isn't the case anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I'm going to like describe it for you guys just a little bit because it's ridiculous. And also you just heard TJ say that it exists at the patent office, which means that not only was it like his first foray, but it also had tech in it that was patented. That's wild. So, how many years ago? When was the first one done?
It was conceptualized in around 2013, and it was first made probably about 2014, maybe early 2015.
Okay, so I mean we're closing on a decade, roughly, right? Yeah. Full decade since conception. And at this time, it stands out even more than it does now, which is basically a pocket knife with toolless takedown in a very clever way. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. It's not a knife I think about. Like I'll go 6 months without even thinking about that knife. And I think most people will go 6 years without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
But it is like this keystone at the beginning of my career that if you take it out, I don't know what the result would be, but it would be so different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's my logo is from that knife. Like the logo
that's a good bit of history. I didn't even know that.
So the logo was designed right after I designed that knife because it had a dovetail system in it. And so the logo is a dovetail because my name is the shape of a dovetail. The S and the Z make a dovetail.
I'm staring at your hat right now.
Yeah. So it's an S and a Z combining into a dovetail. And the first knife I designed had a dovetail. So that's the only thing that like is left of it, I guess you would say. Okay.
I got it. There's like a term that I want to exist. So I'm going to like put it out there and I don't know what it is. Maybe it already exists. It's like hyper knife. Like you talk hyper knives. What is it I would say in most makers working lifetimes, there are periods where the work is like, it's different. It's somehow like crazy inspired or something that is different than like the standard like the standard way they're working or where they like grow into as a maker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is that time period called?
Like
it's hard.
The defining period.
It's not like defining, but like I look back.
The Vision Quest.
It's like a Vision Quest knife or something because I look back and there's knives that I made that one, I actually don't know if I could make now.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely wouldn't want to. But when I look at it, I'm like, oh man, that is cool. And I think it's kind of a perfect storm of time availability, learning and experimentation, not knowing the correct way to maybe do things. Like I think there's this like these elements that come into play. And I really do think that most makers, if you're in it for a while, you will experience a time where you're like, holy cow, that was amazing work.
Formative.
Or like, yeah. What is that time period?
For me, or just as a like definition level?
What's a catch-all term for that? How would you like define that?
Oh shoot. I know exactly what you're talking about. I can like sense the feeling that you're conveying, but I don't know. It's like it's almost like it's going to sound really bizarre, but it's almost like a puberty of the career. You know what I mean? It's like,
that's good.
It's like the coming of age. Like, I don't know.
But the Japanese have a word for it.
Yeah. The Japanese have a word for
the Germans don't.
Yeah. Probably. I don't know.
The good things you make before you know how to make the things you end up making and then forget.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that one, like I said, it's a weird one to pick because nobody knows about it. And it's not what I think of now when I think of your work, but it's my favorite.
Huh? I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a good question, John.
Dude, that is a good question, John.
That was a good one. Yeah. All right. We do have another question, and this is a good question in a very different way.
This is trolling.
Yeah, this is
trolling us.
Yeah, this is like meme worthy, I guess you'd say. So, Worksharp Corporate apparently is supporting us on Patreon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Love you guys. That's awesome. And they asked, "How do you sharpen a knife?" So, there's the meme for you. But I guess we got to answer the question, my friend.
I guess so. Theirs is how to.
Can I just, if I wanted to cap my sharpening guidelines with like one phrase, you know what it would be?
What would it be?
It's all in the strop.
Ooh.
That's whenever anybody that asks me about sharpening, I'm not like the best sharpener in the world, but like from what I've learned, like it's all in the strop.
Do you think that is potentially because your dad's a world-class leather worker?
Yeah, it's got a lot to do with it.
Do you think maybe there's some trickle down knowledge there?
So just as a quick example of what I mean, so like I had a buddy of mine, actually it's my brother-in-law. He found a axe head in the foundation of his like 100-year-old house.
Sick.
Because he was replacing the entire subfloor and like a bunch of the joists, and he's like, holy cow. And it's like a carpenter's axe head because the back side is a claw hammer and the front side is an axe. So it's like for like the old school guys building houses had like a hatchet to work with.
Yeah.
And so
like
it's rusty, pitted, like, you know, barely recognizable in some ways. And he put a new handle on it, and I'm like, you want me to sharpen that for you? And he's like, oh, that'd be awesome. So he gave it to me. This was like this month. I went and I hit it with 120 grit on a slack belt to like keep the convex edge, you know. 120 grit is all I did, and I was like, I'm just going to strop it, see what happens. I stropped it, and the way that I strop it, I'm pretty happy with. And I went and put it like a steep angle. I mean, it's probably like 30-degree pitch on each side, like I don't know, like 60-degree included angle, and it would just roll hair off your arm. I mean, 120 grit on the actual grind,
right?
But because of the way that it's stropped, I could easily shave my face with the thing.
What did you strop on?
So I use a 2x72 leather belt.
Yep.
And this is going to be controversial, but I don't like using wheels to strop. I know that's like risky to say, but that's like where I stand. It's not
risky to say. I have experimented a lot. I am currently using a leather belt. I also have this crazy leather wheel that says property of Ken Onion on the side.
Oh my gosh.
Which is pretty funny.
That's awesome.
And that thing is awesome too. The story behind that one is actually really interesting. It was a gift, and it apparently there was like a maker in Japan that only liked Ken, and Ken was the only person that could get these
Oh my gosh.
wheels, which like kind of tracks in a weird way. So
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that strop is the make or break moment. A lot of times, people spend so much time talking about steel types, and while very valid, I think the average user will get way more benefit out of proper edge geometry and how that edge is prepared for like certain tasks than they will notice out of a steel type. Like it's crazy. Like I like steel, and like a lot of it comes down to me like, does it matter if it rusts more or less? Because knives do different things.
Yeah. So let me ask you this:
breaks down.
Do you ever? Because you mostly like freehand sharpen on a belt.
I do, yeah.
On a 2x72. Do you know roughly, because you have such good muscle memory that you have an edge geometry that's super consistent, what angle is that, or roughly?
It's like funny. People ask that. Somebody just asked like, hey, what angle do I sharpen this at? And I'm like, oh man. I would guess we are in the like 15 to 17 range. The freehand through multiple processes yields inconsistent results. So if I freehand grind a blade and that blade is 10 thousandths and another one is 12 and another one is 8, I'm sharpening to feel a lot of times. So sometimes that bevel is going to be a little steeper or not. But I guess at the end, like as I'm testing it, I'm like going for a feel. It's incredibly imprecise.
I mean, they're very. I've got one of your customs right here that you sharpened right in front of me, and so it's like, it's a beautiful edge. It's
Thanks.
Really, really good.
I also think it's interesting how different makers like Tom Crine's knives are always like insanely sharp, and like people talk about hair popping. That he's coming off the grinder. He's really, really fast. I spend like a kind of a little bit of time like messing with things and trying to like fine tune them. This is one like I actually went down and spent some time with WorkSharp, because sharpening is one of those things where there are so many small details and like so many minor variations on how you do it. For me, it's one thing to sharpen a knife the way that we do on a 2x72 as a factory edge. But if a customer sends a knife into me for maintenance or to have it sharpened, I never want to go back to the 2x72 because you're removing material and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so that was like one of the big questions I had for WorkSharp. And that was, I came away with some different techniques, which was pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess to be more specific, how to sharpen a knife, the makers are always going to say a 2x72. If, like you said, if there is no bevel present, if you're literally talking about a square cornered, fresh kniff. But a 2x72 is obviously not your standard approach if you're not a maker. So you get really into the weeds, and WorkSharp knows this because they have like 5 different SKUs of completely different sharpening platforms for different ideas and goals in mind. You know what I mean? They've got guided stones, which I've always been a fan of. It's like an angle defined guided stone sharpening system. Really, really good.
That's what I always recommend for maintenance. This is such a good, well played. I have a feeling I know who posted that message. This is smart. Yeah. You guys get a nice little block of time.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, good job, guys.
Dude. The Edge Pro, I think.
Yeah.
That's at this point, I think it's a good price. It allows people to do it and not mess up.
You can do it slowly.
Really nice. That's the key.
A lot of systems don't move slowly. If it's got a belt going around a motor, like it's probably going to be too fast for like a beginner.
Yep.
You're
and they like WorkSharp does those too. And like when I went out there, I had a lot of preconceived notions around them because it's the 2x72 mentality. This is going to pull too much steel, but I saw the way they use it. and the grits of belts that they use, I was like, okay, that's actually like manageable, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sharpen your kitchen knives?
Kitchen knives?
Yeah, like just house knives.
Same thing, 2x72.
Really?
So yeah, so everything that's going through my shop right now
is getting not the shop. Becca's knives, like your knives in the house.
I sharpen them the
you
exact
bring
same
them
way.
back out.
Yeah, I do the exact same thing.
So you are doing maintenance on your grinder then?
Yeah,
but it's a kitchen knife. It's different.
I was just gonna say 18 degrees is my angle.
Okay.
I have knives planned in the future that will not have 18 degrees because I think there are cases where it's too shallow of an edge.
Mm-hmm.
But on a kitchen knife, I do all of my sharpening with a guided angle, but on a 2x72. So it's all like set with a protractor to 18 degrees. And so I'll hit a kitchen knife the exact same way. And if I'm not sure how much material needs removed, or how dull it is, sometimes I'll just drop it first and see if I can get the edge back. And if I can't, only then I'll go to like a 400 grit belt. But I always try, if I know it already has an edge, I'm going to try to strop it alone. And because like you said, you don't want to remove material unless you are forced to.
Right.
And so stropping is just a polishing, and it'll roll. Like if your edge has a roll, it'll help correct that.
Yeah.
But it's not going to like,
Why do you think a whole generation thinks that a knife steel is a sharpener? There's like a whole, like boomers, basically, there's like a whole generation where it's like the steel in a knife block, which is for aligning the feather, is like people are just trying to sharpen their knives on this like piece of steel.
Piece of hardened steel. Yeah. No bueno. Yeah.
I wonder what that is though. Like, why was that like in a period of time? Like, why does everyone think that like this smooth piece of steel in your knife block is how you sharpen your knife?
Yeah. Misconceptions, man.
Someone was out there pitching.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like,
yeah,
it's interesting. You mentioned that you use an angle guide.
Yeah.
It's something I've thought about a lot. It makes sense for you because you have high numbers of standard models.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your angle guide? Like,
so I use 2x72 flat platen.
Yep.
So my edges are flat.
Yep.
And I have a work rest that I set at the 18 degrees. It's actually 108 degrees. So if you can imagine the vertical platen and then 108 degree angle.
Yep.
Then I have a piece of like Delrin or like HDPE, just like a white piece of low friction plastic.
Yep.
And I put pins in it so that when I slide my blade onto those pins, it's held 90 degrees to the work rest, which makes it 18 degrees to the belt. And I've posted this on Instagram. Maybe I'll post it again. But then I just slide that piece of plastic around on my work rest, and I have like range of motion on the plane of the work rest. So when I'm moving towards the tip, I can roll towards the tip, but it doesn't change the like angle of attack. You know what I mean?
I love that.
It's so good, dude. Like I just don't think I'll ever change it. Like I just fell in love with it. I know there's probably better ways, but it just,
you know what? Good. It's not, this ties in with something that we were talking about before we started recording, for me, which is, I think because of my background, like doing everything by hand all the time, a lot of times I just default to it. And, the reality is that like, if you are a business and you want to be profitable, removing yourself from the process, my buddy Keaton phrased it this way this morning, which is like take your hands out of the process, which is weird to me. Is like a concept, but it's 100% true. Like just because you can do something with skill well doesn't mean that that's the best use of your time in a working context. So things like using a angle guide that provides a consistent result to sharpening, it doesn't necessarily mean that like you're going to sharpen faster than me, but you are going to have to correct less errors and you will be able to do it for longer periods of time.
And I got to point out like one thing that I didn't do this on purpose. It just resulted in this is that the strop, being the 2x72 belt that it is in the exact same system in the exact same manner. And so the strop is hitting the face of the micro bevel perfectly flat. And so it's basically polishing to that keen edge, like at the exact angle. And so
that's the key.
And that's where I was saying, like on a wheel, if you have an 18-degree angle on this micro bevel, if you're at like a half a degree off one direction, you're not on the edge, you're on the bevel. If you're half degree off the other direction, you're actually doing a third bevel, like a third micro bevel.
Or rounding over. And we're talking like very small margins that, like going back to Tom, one of the reasons I think Tom's knives are so sharp, where it's like, okay, I have good muscle memory. Tom has been making knives longer than me, but he's basically was like a one-man factory.
His middle name is Fanuc.
Yeah, basically. I mean, dude cranks, like it's old school, but it's like he'll post bench photos and you're like, all right, that's 70 knives. I just think that he actually is so dialed.
The repetition.
That those edges, like he's not having the micro bevels. He's not having the rounding. Like he has a process that is just so crispy. Yeah. Okay. I was going to mention this, like, process wise, today I did something that is now looking at it is like slap forehead kind of moment. So to make side pops, I go from a water jet cut blank into a fixture. And then I've been really bad about updating fixtures and like, I guess just like evolutionary adjustments, right? Like I'll start something, I'll get it working, and then it'll stop. So the way that I was doing side pops is I would cut the like first op, it's 3 ops. By the time I pull it off, I have a finished side pop in like varying thicknesses, whatever. But I have all these shapes that I do, toothies and royals and baldies. I would just hand cut those and hand grind them. And it's insanity. And I will say this is only on like the more rare stuff. So like when I'm doing like thick titanium or zirconium or whatever, the standard ones like brass and copper, like those were fixtured in a way that they're cut to shape. But today I just wrote like a little secondary program so I can take like a finished side pop blank and just change the face shape. And I felt so ridiculous because in my head, I'm like, I can do this really quick. Like, I mark it out, I go, I bandsaw it, zip, zip, zip. It takes me 7 minutes to do it on the mill, front and back, chamfered, and it's perfect. I don't know how long it takes me to do it by hand. In some cases, I might be able to make the argument that it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes. But as I'm sitting there looking at a stack of 25, I just realized like how much time that has actually cost me. So I'm trying to look at things not from like, what can I do, but from like, what can I remove myself from? So your sharpening method like falls under that category. It's not that you can remove yourself from it. It's that you're removing a lot of the potential errors that arise.
Yeah. I think the reason that I did it, and this is to your point right now, is like I used to get stressed about sharpening.
Totally.
And it made me do things where I'd be like, oh, I need to sharpen those 20 knives. I should probably do a little accounting first. I should probably like double check my emails. Like I'd stall.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can do it freehand, but like, why am I having so much mental friction about this? Because they're finished knives and I'm just scared.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just don't want to be scared. So now sharpening is just like a podcast hour for me. Like I just don't even
you just do it. It's almost I think with a lot of what we're doing, I noticed there was a couple questions below this too. We might be able to dive into a couple more. I think this dives into like the business side of it, which is if you can't automate it, you should at least remove the pain points. Lock fitting is probably like on folders is probably one of the biggest ones. Like I used to freehand lock fit and it's like, yeah, I can do it, but there's literally no way that it is more efficient than being able to use an indexable, repeatable fixture.
Yeah.
It's the hard part. The hurdle is getting to that point. Like I basically had to spend, I probably spent like 45 minutes figuring out how to like cut this shape. And like, convert it and like, okay, like do offsets and stuff. And I have to do that with every SciPop shape that I have, but then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's automated. And then if I want to cut one, I'm like, oh, I'm doing a show. Like, oh, I want one weird, whatever Melman or something. Like I can just go cut that one shape and not have to go to the grinder, not have to like, it's different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have that fixture for every model or do you have one fixture that works?
So what I have found is I'm sharpening without scales on, which gives me the benefit of just sliding it. I don't even clamp it. I don't screw it on there. I literally just slide it over pins.
Yeah.
And so I have one block that has pins on one side for the Overland, pins on the other side for the Confidant. I have one block for the Overland Sport. And I found out that the turn sits on those pins perfectly for the Overland Sport. So right now I just have the 3. But what I have developed is if the knife was a folder, if it was needed to be assembled, let's say it was a glue up knife, let's say it was a warranty thing, the clamps that you see on like a Lansky or like even the work sharps, like where it's just like a gator mouth with a little like wing nut
on like a bar.
Yeah, I mounted one of those to one of those Delrin blocks.
Yep.
So you could do the exact same thing with literally any knife ever
by
doing that.
Are you grinding edge up?
Edge down.
You are doing edge down.
So forward belt travel, not reverse. Edge down. I'm not. Okay. I don't think that's necessarily of any benefit versus going reverse and then doing a different fixture setup, but just the fixture in general.
I'll look at your Insta and see because I'm very curious.
Part of why I like that part of why I went with the edge down is I don't have a reverse switch, and a lot of these grinders they don't install them because the tracking will go haywire in reverse.
Weird,
yeah, and so it's like they just don't. So I could literally put like a $10 switch in my VFD and then have reverse, but it just works the other way. So
I have a huge scar across 2 fingers because of sharpening at a point where I learned to sharpen edge up on a paper. Well, I learned it's motor spinning in reverse on a buffer with a paper strop.
Mm-hmm.
I had reversed it because another knife maker came to my shop and was like, ooh, that's super dangerous. Like I almost walked up and put my knife into that edge down. I reversed it, but then I forgot.
Oh, shoot, dude.
So I sharpen edge up. I strop edge down. Oh, wait. Okay. That's different. Depends on the model. On a lot of the knives, I actually sharpen edge down too. Dude, it's a whole thing. Like for years, I would like have a headphone in, like having a conversation while I was doing knife making stuff. And as soon as I start sharpening, I would hang up.
Yeah.
This is like the job that I didn't have any like extra bonus points to actually like hold a conversation.
Bandwidth fully consumed.
Done. Full focus.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's terrifying, dude.
I know.
I mean, if you've ever also like because you grind edge up on a downward traveling belt, like when you're doing the primary, and if you've ever had that catch a belt seam, it's a like immediate adrenaline rush. Like take a break,
big pucker,
go drink a beer, do something else because it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's probably the scariest thing that's happened to me in the shop because all I heard was a very fast like pop.
Boom.
With some harmonics in it.
Probably it hitting the table.
It was like 3 things. I heard that. I saw blood hit the floor. And then I heard another sound behind me.
Oh.
It was actually the knife hitting the back wall of my shop. The blood was just straight through my hand.
Oh, no.
And it went through middle and ring finger of my right hand. Didn't cut any tendons, but like I still have scars and I still have nerve damage from it. And I was like, I consider that like the luckiest accident I've ever had.
Could have been much worse.
Could have been much worse. It just like, you always hear the buffer is like the most dangerous tool in the shop. And you're like, you don't understand until it takes something away from you and throws it at you.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to make those combs and I would hit them on a buffer, the brass ones. And because there's so many teeth, there's so much traction for that to get a hold of it. And I used to hear those things fly, and they make a very harmonic. It's almost like a harmonica, literally, like and it's terrifying.
I don't know. It's interesting. I think sharpening is one of those ones where the more precision you can add, the better. If you're doing like like what feels like a consistent like process on a knife, but like you look at guys who are blacksmithing, they're dealing or doing convex edges. There's so many ways to do this stuff that like not all of it. It's definitely not a one process fits all scenario.
Let me ask you this: belt speed on a 2x72. What are you going for that?
I'm running pretty slow.
Same.
I want it fast enough that I don't have to push hard, slow enough that it's not super easy to make a mistake.
Yeah.
And I've really run the gamut as far as like fresh belts, old belts, 220, 400, structured abrasives. And I still don't have a consistent process. It's like, I'm doing a big knife. Like, all right, I'm going to rough in at 220 and then take it to 4, or I'm doing this like gnarly tactical. Like I'm going to leave it at 220 and I'm going to strop it and it's going to be like toothy. And, I don't know. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Have you ever mirror polished an edge?
I have not. I mean, I've messed with it.
I love seeing pictures of it.
Yeah.
Because
it's beautiful.
Like, I know. Yeah. Like, we've talked about Rockstead a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like a prime example where you like look at it and you're like, it's optically polished or something.
What do they call that in the watchmaking world where it's like a black polish? I think they call
black
it
polish.
Because if something is flat enough and polished enough without waves in it, it'll reflect either white or black. So you go pass under a light bulb and it's like you get beams of black and white. It's crazy.
Keaton sends me pictures of things that he's polishing and I hate everything that I do. Usually. I've mentioned Keaton before. If you guys are listening and don't follow him, go to Keaton Myrick on Instagram.
He's
and
legit.
You can see like some pretty wild finishes.
Yeah. Those
it's cool
watchmakers.
stuff, man. I'm always curious like what industries we can pull from. Like automotive is a great example. Like automotive polishing processes for certain things like aluminum. There's just good ways to do things. And I think it's really easy inside of like smaller, like knowledge craft-based systems to like do things the way they are done in your industry. Sometimes like you step outside. That's like Rockstead. I don't think that what Rockstead does is knife industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Same with Microtech. Like you look at the polishes on a Microtech, it's not the knife industry. That's industrial. It's a different polishing process. It's like mold and dye or something.
Yeah, exactly. Injection mold. Todd Begg, his work is like that. He studied like tool and die making. That was basically how he got there.
Yeah.
And you can totally see it.
Yeah. You're running like felt bobs and diamond paste, and it's a different game.
Yeah, without just blowing out all the features. That's the big difference.
Key, right?
Yeah.
That is when I first started learning about like polishing knives, and like I don't really do polished knives. But Joe Cordova did like mirror polished Loveless style knives a lot of times. It's really cool. He would use these super small buffs. He's like, small buffs don't catch, and they are going to wash out your lines less. And it's like a grit progression to a point. And then you're like just kissing it with buffing wheels. Cause you see a lot of stuff that is way over finished.
Yeah.
It's like, cool. You made it shiny, but like you washed everything out.
Yeah. You riverstoned it.
You basically riverstoned it. But that's like another one. Like you can mirror polish with tumbling.
Yep. Swiss Army,
dude.
Pull
I
out.
love that finish.
Yeah. Look at a Victorinox. I mean, they're, I believe, the biggest knife company in the world, and they're doing a mirror polish on every single
It's
blade.
not a true mirror polish though. Like
True.
it's bright.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes there's tool marks in it. But even that said, I actually have one.
Yeah.
I have one in front of me.
Or even like a Mora knife. Like obviously they do their Scandi grind, but if you look at the flats of a Mora knife, it's pretty close to a mirror.
That finish is so nice. It's reflecting off of my camera.
Yeah.
Jeez. And it's not washed out, which is amazing. Because that like tumbling, that is like the biggest risk.
Yeah. I like the mirror finishes like that, but I also don't like them. I don't know. I'm torn.
Yeah, I know. You know, what's cool is they are more resistant to corrosion.
Yeah. The smoother the finish, the more it resists.
Well, there's like a lot to be said for it from a functional standpoint.
Yeah. So it glides through a cut.
Yep.
But something about like reflectivity that is weird to me.
Yeah.
Like the first thing I do whenever I buy a car is black out all the chrome. I don't know what it is. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. I'm just
what is that process for you? Like, what are you doing to black it out?
Well, I mean, like my current Jeep, I didn't have any of that. There's no chrome on it. But like I had a car at one point and it just had like a couple little bezels, like a couple little accents. I blasted dipped them.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy. But
it's funny with Tacomas. That's like one of the first things that people either debadge or like like get them coated.
Yeah.
We're getting ready to do it to the minivan.
There you go.
3-inch lift and some Falcon Wild Peaks, I think.
Nice. That's awesome, dude. The wife's Subi is getting wheels and tires tomorrow, but no lift.
Nice. Pretty fun.
Car stuff, man.
Dude. Jesse's question, like for knife makers, I feel like a lot of this stuff really rolls in. Because you look and you're like, you have this shop full of tools. There's gonna be something else that you're making. But that is, again, that's like maker mindset where you might have something like, complete retirement gig specifically. Like, I don't even, no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. I always say like, I want to be, at some point, I just want to be like a granddad knife maker.
Yeah.
Like I want to make, knives for my grandkids, like Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop.
Yeah.
I want to make a dresser. I don't know. Like I want to make for the absence of money.
Yep. No,
that would be a good retirement.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
While I'm on a yacht.
Well, I got to say that's got to be a good way to end this because in 8 minutes, I believe Dalton will be heading home. Nice. And he's taking a week off for an elk hunt. So I need to go wish him good luck on his elk hunt.
Okay.
So everybody wish Dalton good luck. And then
good luck,
soon,
D.
I will tell you guys if he brought home the bacon or not. But
good thing you got a deep freezer.
And a bunch of knives.
I love it.
He's going to go do that. So anyway, man, and I appreciate it. I appreciate all you guys. Thanks for the Patreon support. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the questions. If you want to ask questions, keep them coming.
Somebody mentioned Discord. We are working on it. We're trying to do it a little more, or I should say I am trying to clean it up because I kind of had it under a general server. So we're going to link it to our Patreon.
Love to do that.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Leave us a review and we'll see you, talk to you soon.
Peace.
All right. Take it easy, bro.